I am here with Erinn Joyce today. She's a highly experienced marketing and sales enablement professional who has worked with Fortune 500 companies as well as startups, nonprofits, and everything in between. She has made a big impact in every role that she has taken, and today we get to tap into her secrets for success. So, welcome, Erinn, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Brianne. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to participate.
So let's start by sharing, where did you go to college? What was your degree? And what was your first job out of college?
Sure. So I went to Loyola University in New Orleans. There's, I think, five of them in the country. It's a smaller Jesuit liberal arts college. I chose it because at the time I really wanted to enter the field of journalism. And when I went to college, they had one of the top ranked journalism programs. They had a brand new facility with broadcasting booths. I mean, it was beautiful. It was like, a dream school if that's the career track you were choosing. So I majored in, it was a BA in mass communications with the specialized track in photojournalism. So most of my classes were either photography or writing classes. But I did take a lot of electives. I guess they were elective classes in graphic design and layout. And it was like when there was like Photoshop 1.0. So so I actually lucked into my first job because my graphic design teacher was also a freelance illustrator, and he had a client that was looking for a junior graphic designer. So I took that job because it was pretty much guaranteed right after I graduated. And then I was in the marketing department for the company that makes Tabasco pepper sauce. So it was McElhaney Company, maker of Tabasco brand products. And I was a graphic designer in their marketing department. And I've been in marketing ever since. I never made it into my journalism field.
All right, I have a couple follow-up questions. One, did you get free Tabasco
Oh,
sauce?
yes, as much Tabasco sauce as you want.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Two, we talk a lot about how networking, and it's kind of like the people that you know is how you find your roles. And I guess that's the same for you, right? It was your professor. So how did that connection come about? Did he approach you? Did you ask? What did that turn out to be?
I mean, I think he approached me honestly because I was eyeing up, some newspaper jobs and things like that. It was like May, graduation was around the corner, and he was like, "What are you going to do after you graduate?" And I'm like, I'm working on that." He said, "Well, I have a client that's looking for a part-time graphic designer if you want to, dip your toe in." And I said, "Sure, sign me up." So I went, I had an interview, and I was hired in their creative services department, which was part of the marketing department at McElhaney Company.
Okay, all right. So while you were there, what do you think was like the biggest surprise about entering the workforce after college?
I would say that the biggest surprise for me was how frequently change occurs in the workplace. I feel like when you're in school, it's like much more in your control, right? Like you go to your classes, everything you're doing, like you can really control, and you can, it feels more permanent, I guess, going to college. And then all of a sudden you're thrown in a situation where they're changing the rules and the like the guidelines and everything constantly. The corporate initiatives shift, people's roles change, organizations they expand, and then 2 months later they contract or whatever it is. And so I just think it was very different from school, and that was really, I think, kind of like being able to control change was very, or the lack of being able to control change, I should say, was probably the biggest surprise. But I learned very quickly that it's important to be flexible and fluid, and, you know, recognizing early on in your career that you really can only control what you can control is really important. And is all you can do is control how you react to change, right? And that's the most important thing. And being able to control your reactions and stay on your own track despite everything that's going on around you, I think it's a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, I think that's so true is the change you have to, especially in certain industries like the technology industries, or I think everything right now is being affected by AI and technology. So there's change in pretty much every single industry. And if you aren't comfortable with that change, it's going to hold you back in your career. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's super important and not maybe something that you're set up for in college.
Right. Yeah, I think you definitely have more control over your, your own time, obviously, but it's not just, it's everything that's going on around you. So it's good to know that going in. It's not the kind of thing people would tell you necessarily.
I think at this age, you're coming out of college, you're in your early 20s, and a lot of people think, like, oh, I have to have it all together now. I've got to get, this great job, and I have to have my investments set up, and I have to have a family, or whatever it is. They just feel like they have to have it all together. But I personally think the 20s, that decade is a lot for exploring. It's not necessarily like you have to get out of college and be an adult or have it all together. So, what would you say to someone who feels maybe a little bit behind or lost as they're coming out of college?
I mean, anyone that's feeling behind or lost, I mean, I would just say, like, don't feel that way. Like, please don't feel that way, and don't ever judge yourself, like, based on comparing yourself to other people. I think everyone has, like, different life experiences, and that's what really makes us unique, and there's no, like, right or wrong way to navigate your career or your life, right? So, I think some people graduate and they know, "This is exactly what I wanna do. This is the career path I want." So they know what they want to do. They follow that path. They hit the milestones. They make it look easy,
Yeah.
And then other people, which I would say I am one of the others, take a less direct route maybe to where they want to be. But it's important to know that I think that, like, the journey to get to where you're going is just as valuable as the end result. And I would say that, I've had personal success at life and work, like just really focusing on the present and what I can do today to set myself up for success tomorrow. And I think we can plan for tomorrow, and we can have personal and career goals, but focusing too much on the past or looking too much forward into the future is not healthy, and it's really a recipe for anxiety. And so I would say, if you're just starting out, like, give yourself a break, and, like, if you have a path in mind, that's great. But if you don't, that's okay. And if you're young, and try different things and find what you like, because a lot of people spend their careers doing something they didn't really enjoy, and it's not till later in life they find, like, their true love for a job or a role.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's take this opportunity. Give us the lay of the land with your career. So after you were working with the Tabasco products, where did you find yourself, and kind of give us where you've been along the way?
Sure. So I moved from working for McElhaney Company, and I moved on from graphic design and really managed their whole creative services department before I left there. And I managed their retail and food service divisions for their creative service department. And then from there, I actually relocated to the Philadelphia area, and I went into the office products industry. Honestly, it was a role that was aligned with my skills and my background, and I took a job doing that. I worked for a couple different companies over the years in that industry, wholesaling and reselling office supplies. And then I moved into hospitality industry, working for food service companies and hospitality contract labor companies, including Cisco and Aramark. And honestly, I've worked in a few different industries for a lot of different organizations. I worked for a testing organization as well. So, I mean, I personally find that I like doing different things. I like new challenges, new industries. I like learning new subject matter. I really admire people that stay in a same career with the same company for their entire career, but that's not, like, probably for me. I would get bored. I think I do like, learning new industries and solving new challenges for the organizations that I work for. So I like to keep myself on my toes and keep it
Yeah.
exciting.
I feel that too, and it's kind of like the opposite. I've been where I'm at which you know we've worked together for a couple years. I think I'm on 13 years at the same place, but for me, it's an agency, so you get new clients, new industries all the time. But I understand exactly what you mean. Is if you are bored, that is a recipe for disaster at work.
Absolutely.
So yeah, with that being said, the moves that you have made going into new industries, new companies, new challenges, have you had to interview a lot? Because I feel like that's something that the listeners have the most problem with right now. They're finding it very challenging in interviews and doing well in those interviews to get the job offers. So, what is your best advice for going into interviews?
So I think going into interviews right out of college, you know, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage because you don't necessarily have the hard skill experience in an organizational atmosphere in that environment. But at the same time, I think employers know that when they're hiring folks. So I think it's really important to not just focus on like the skill-based conversation that you're having in a job interview, but maybe to talk a lot about the soft skills that you can bring to the table. You know, and this goes back sort of to the whole point of the Independence Lab too, is really talking about like what are those skills like having good communication, being a team player, being flexible and adaptable to change, right? Like these are all things that like you can be good at them and you can teach yourself good
Mhm.
time management and how to be a good communicator and how to solve problems and really emphasizing that in a job interview or when you're having conversations and you're networking with potential employees or groups, that stuff is really forgotten a lot, I think. And I think, even the people who are doing the interview often forget it and they don't focus on it enough. So I think I would say, for a new graduate, it's really important to promote yourself, not just your skills, your hard skills that you learned in college or that, you think are the right ones for that role, but to really promote yourself and your qualities that would showcase how good you are at your soft skills too.
Yeah, that's something that people get kind of hung up on. They're like, well, this is my first role. I don't really have job experience, but really you do if you've done any part-time work, even if you work at the coffee shop, if you volunteer, if you ran a campus organization, you can tell those stories and incorporate how you develop those soft skills. And I think that's so important. And I love hearing those, now that I do interviewing in my day job, I love hearing those types of stories. And I think it helps people stand out during those interviews. So you touched on emotional intelligence, that's something I talk about a lot at the Independence Lab. So what does that term mean to you?
I guess I would define it really as like, the ability to recognize and manage your own emotions, but also to really be able to understand and read social situations effectively and the emotions of the other people in the room. So like in the workplace, I think that's really important because it's not just about how you perform at your job, but it's equal parts how you interact with everybody else. So if if somebody is always the center of conflict, but they're really good at their job otherwise, you know, I will say people are replaceable. We see that in the corporate world a lot, and we don't
Mhm.
always think we're replaceable, but when you've seen so many reorganizations and downsizing and things like that, it's always important to focus on the emotional intelligence factor of your role and how you can not only bring your best self, but also help other people be their best selves in their roles too. I think that's really, really important. And it helps you make better decisions and evaluate situations better when you're able to do it based on what the facts are and what the outcomes you want are, and not so much on your emotions or the emotions of other people and how that's making you feel as a leader, or someone in a decision making
Mhm.
position.
Yeah. And I can Just using our history together, you and I worked together. You hired the agency in a role you were in, and then you left that role, as we've kind of talked about, and you hired us again. And if we hadn't built that relationship, I doubt that that would have happened. So that relationship building, I think, also plays into that emotional intelligence and being able to form those partnerships or relationships with your customers, your clients, your employees, your boss, your peers, all of those people, and that all comes from emotional intelligence. And I think that it's going to benefit you, your company, your role, your career trajectory in so many different ways. And that's just like one way that it helped me in my role. So thanks, Erin.
Absolutely. And I do also think, like, although I think it's really natural for some people, like their natural qualities and then just the way that people are, but I do think it absolutely can be acquired. It's something that people can work on through thoughtful practice and effort if they really want to impact their emotional intelligence and their awareness of other people and their behaviors. It's absolutely something that, people can strive to be better at.
Yeah, I love that because anybody can develop those skills for emotional intelligence. It's not something you have to be
Exactly.
born with. It doesn't cost money. I think that's the big thing here is anybody can develop these skills, and it's so wonderful to have that, to boost your career. And speaking of boosting careers, I know that you have built yours and you've gotten promotions and you've had titles of director in them, and you've built this kind of knowledge of how to make an impact at your company. So I'm curious to see what skill sets you use to move from more of the entry level jobs, even at Tabasco in your first where you said you moved up. What skill sets did you use to do that?
Well, I mean, I definitely think like my own, emotional intelligence qualities played a significant part of my success and my ability to move into leadership roles. I do think I've always been like extremely self-aware and empathetic person, and I'm good at managing relationships. So it does come more naturally for me. But beyond the like emotional intelligence piece, I think like authenticity is really important. Generosity is really important. And I don't mean like generosity, like I'm buying you lunch every day or, whatever that is. But like, these are authenticity and generosity, like leaders that have them, like you just know, and they're like people you want to be around, right? And like I've tried my best throughout my career to emulate those qualities as well. I mean, I'm sure we've all worked for someone or with someone who always seemed to be like holding something back from the rest of the team or the rest of the work group or whatever it was, right? Whether it was like knowledge or resources or like whatever that would be, because they people think that someone else is going to look them make them look bad, like if that person's successful or if they know more about a certain subject than them, right? So I think people catch on to those behaviors very quickly. And so they catch on to your attitude. And in the workplace, people are more attracted to people that have a good attitude or have the right attitude, right? And that's way more important than what you know or who you know. Anyone would follow a leader with the right attitude versus the leader who knows everything or knows everyone. And so that's what I mean by being, you know, really authentic in yourself. And then as far as being generous, I'm talking about like generous with your time and with your resources and your subject matter expertise, if that's the case. If you do know the most about the topic, I mean, generosity earns trust, and trust is really what builds teams. So if you can show that you can you can be generous, you can earn the trust of others, you will be a good team leader, you will be a good leader, and it will be recognized. And I think those qualities, in addition to having emotional intelligence, are extremely important. And for me personally, the best managers and the best leaders I've seen are always people that are extremely generous with their time and their resources, and people that really just earn the trust of others because they just have all the right attitude it's lovely when it happens and you get to work with somebody like that.
It is lovely. Yeah, the book called The Go Giver is a it's a short book about sales, but it covers that exact topic about being very generous in the workplace. It just boils down to karma, but it's so, so true. So I love that you brought up those two things, authenticity and generosity. Have you ever felt you've gone into a role and you're starting to experience like, imposter syndrome, like you're not ready or you didn't earn it or whatever it may be? Have you ever felt that going into a new role?
Oh, yes, just about every role, honestly. And if you ever find someone that says they've never felt it, I might have to say they're not being totally honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for me, I've definitely felt imposter syndrome. I mean, I try to stay open-minded and approachable in every
Mhm.
role. I think approachability is a good like remedy for imposter syndrome because approachability it does two things, right? It gives you access to new people. If you're approachable, like people will just like they want to talk to you. They want to know who you are. And then being being able to talk to new people gives you access to new ideas. And so I think staying open-minded and being approachable, it really gives you an advantage and it helps you navigate imposter syndrome a little bit because you have the willingness to learn and to get it right. Somebody once told me when I confessed I had imposter syndrome, they said, well, you know the saying, fake it till you make it, right? And I was like, no, actually, I hadn't heard that before. But so apparently, it is, everybody has it. Everybody has imposter syndrome and everybody feels like, you got to fake it till you make it. But I think really just trying to stay open-minded and approachable really helps ease that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really, really good advice. And just knowing that everybody around you, even probably the CEO of the company you're working for, probably has it. So, I think that just makes us feel a little bit better when we know those things.
I think especially the CEO.
Yeah, no doubt. So you've worked for big giant companies, smaller companies, nonprofits, all of these different types of companies. And there's no one good, perfect fit for everyone. There's no like career trajectory that you have to follow. But given what you know now and looking back, what do you think that young women should consider when they are trying to come up with a, 3 or 5 year plan for their career?
I mean, I think planning your career path is a good idea. If you know what you want to do and you have some goals to set, right? Where do you want to be in 3 years? What do you want your job to look like in 5 years? Are you getting experience now because you have it, there's an organization you really want to work at? Or is there a role you really want to get and the organization is less important? So like kind of understanding yourself and those goals is really important. I I was not so much of a following a plan and executing on it as I was more of being open to new roles for a
Mhm.
variety of reasons, right? I mean, I've pretty much always been open to change, which I know change is very difficult and it is hard to overcome the first couple of times. But once you do it, it gets easier every time you do it. But sometimes I wanted to earn more money. Sometimes I wanted to lead a team. I wanted more responsibility. Other times I was bored maybe in the industry and I wanted to learn something new and try something that I thought seemed like it would be more fun, like than office products, for example. So, there's lots of reasons like I would change jobs or be open to a new role, but I think where I've worked has always been less important than the impact that I would be able to make. And that's like what keeps you at a job or maybe what would keep me happy at a job. So
Yeah.
if it was a 10-person organization or a 10,000-person organization, like my personal fulfillment there and my work life balance were always the most important thing for me. And that's not to say that that's the right thing for everybody, but that's the right thing for me. I've always felt very strongly that I wanted a good work-life balance, and I've been fortunate for the most part to have that, mostly
Mhm.
through my career. But sometimes when you're unhappy somewhere, you don't feel fulfilled, maybe it is time to consider alternatives and change is hard, but once you take that first leap, it definitely gets easier. And like I said, hey, some people stay at the same company in the same kind of functional role for 25, 30 years and they're happy. And I think that's great. I think that's impressive. And I just like to change it up. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. So, I mean, the most important lesson, I guess, I can pass on as someone who's changed roles in organizations several times during my career is that just make sure you're running towards something and not away from something. Because
Uh,
I've done both. And when you're running away from
yeah.
something, it doesn't it doesn't necessarily make the next opportunity any better if that's not something you're really excited about. So sometimes it's a little better to stick it out and make sure you get your next move right. And that's a lesson that I've learned.
Yeah. We've talked about change a lot. So, what's something like a mental health practice or something that you've experienced that you could share for building resilience? I think a lot of times people take feedback maybe a little too personally, or, they're experiencing change at work, whether it's just a change to a process or, the company's downsizing and they've lost their job. A lot of that change can be hurtful, or you could take it personally. We all need to build resilience. So, my question to you is how do we do that?
I think exactly what you said is right. I think it's really important not to take feedback or even criticism if you feel like you're being criticized. I think it's not healthy to take it personally, and you have to put it in context too, right? And so like I've been in a marketing career my whole life. And at one point, as I mentioned, I was selling office products. We were marketing office products to companies that resold them. I mean, it wasn't brain surgery. So, if it was like, if there's negative feedback about, what you're doing, you take that. But it's like at the end of the day, is that you're allowing it to impact you more than it actually impacts your role or your job. And that's really like finding that balance too. Like, how do you take feedback and turn it around and, do something with it, but not let it get you down? I think for me, resilience really, and this is like across the board, like personal, professional, it's really just the ability to like learn from the past and then move on,
Mhm.
right? Like I think we always need to live in the present and we need to stay grounded in reality and not let things tumble into, larger problems than they really are. So, I mean, for me, resilience really is the practice of learning from the past, taking it, and then doing something with it, and then moving on, or not doing anything with it if you don't think it's valid and
Yeah.
it's not going to improve your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, it really is. Don't let other people tell you who you should be or what will make you happy. That's really important, both professionally and personally.
Yeah, it's separating yourself from this role that you are in at the moment. And that critique is more so about the role and how you're performing that. It's not about you as a person. But what I read it recently, I believe it was in the book Unreasonable Hospitality, is this idea of feedback or even sometimes criticism is actually an investment in that person. So if your boss or somebody at your company is giving you feedback, try to take it in that manner that they are investing in you. They are spending their time and their breath, to make you better. And if you can look at it that way, I think that's super helpful. Like when I read that, I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense." So that helps too.
It's just the way you take feedback really will make an impression too, so
Mhm.
you can't really let you can't let it affect how you perform at work or how you move forward in that relationship with that manager,
Mhm.
that coworker, or whatever it is. So yeah, I think what you said is spot on.
All right. So for young women, I'll give you a scenario here. Somebody who lives in my town, she has graduated college, she has done a ton of interviews, and she just the only job she's really getting offered is like selling cell phones in Sam's Club or Costco. I can't remember which one. It's not her degree right now. She just hasn't found her fit. She doesn't have a nice, clear path for her career out of college. what is your advice for women who don't see a clear path right now? What's one small step that they can take now that will help move them forward?
I would say build your net. If you can't get your dream job today, where can you find people that, you know, could potentially help you find opportunities in the future, or people that could teach you more about the types of roles that you're looking for? Build your network, make friends. And
Mhm,
I think if you work on that, I think opportunities come. So, I mean, that's just it's an investment of time. And,
mhm,
sometimes we all get lucky and we find the perfect job and we apply for it and we get it, and that's great. But more often than not, that's not really the way it works. And so it is important to network, and it's important to join groups where that have shared interests, and just being yourself and making friends and letting people know that you're open to opportunities, and you're, even if you want to volunteer. I mean, that's a great way to start too. I did that a little bit because I was looking to get into a nonprofit and they didn't have any roles open at the time. So I joined one of their committees and I did a lot of volunteer work for them. So to learn a little bit more about their business and how they do things and meet the other people in the organization. So even doing that, if there's an opportunity for you to, work for free a little bit, like that, that's a great way to go about it as well.
yeah, I would have said the exact same thing. The networking, building up your relationships, 100% I think is the way to go there. And I even told her, I said, it doesn't hurt to learn those sales skills because you can use those throughout your whole entire life. So maybe take that job. It's not what you want, but start spending your time building those relationships, and that job will not be your only opportunity for very long. Yeah.
As a new graduate entering the workforce, I think I would say to be more collaborative and ask for help. I think when I first started out, I think I felt like I had to figure it out for myself. I had to get myself my game up to par. I had to figure out the office politics. How do I fit in this organization? That kind of thing, right? I would say the easiest way is to be collaborative in the workplace and ask others what they think or how they're doing something, or how did you solve, I'm having a challenge with this. How did you overcome this, right? Or if there's a challenging personality, like maybe try to collaborate with that person, instead of just kind of writing them off or something like that. So I think there's no shame in not knowing like what you don't know. And I feel like I was maybe too shy and too naive and sensitive in my first role. And again, it's like it's a maturity thing, right? Everybody's in a different
Mhm.
place when we're in our early
Yeah.
20s. And it'll come for everybody. But I do think like enter having that mindset, like I'm gonna come in here and I'm just gonna be friendly and ask people to help me and ask people a lot of questions and try to understand how everything's working. And if I don't know something, I'm just going to ask for help. I
Mhm.
think that that's one piece of advice I'd give myself, as opposed to trying to figure it out and go at it alone and like almost like, you know, kind of isolating yourself in the process. And it doesn't really make you feel better at the end of the day. So networking at work, once you're there and really trying to be that person that's helpful and collaborative, that will get you really far, and it'll earn a lot of trust as well.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you again for sharing all of this advice. I know it's super valuable and I appreciate you being on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brianne.